Today we keep on chugging on the top 50 games of all time, according to Jackson Warfield. I'm going to be taking you through another 10 games today. If you want to know the rules that I set for myself for this list, check out the first list in the series. The big one that you need to know that you don't need to click for is, what is the big one? Oh yeah, this is a greatest of all time list. Unlike a lot of board game reviewers, I'm not going to be changing my list a lot based on what I played in the last couple of months. If I don't play a game much anymore, and I played it for 10 years religiously, that game is going to be very high on the list. Let's get started with number 30. Number 30 is Lost Cities. Lost Cities is probably the smallest conceptually game on the list. Lost Cities is a two-player game, very tactical, where you have a shared deck and all the cards exist once in this deck and you don't know what your opponent has. You're trying to place the cards in order, but you can only go one way. So if I place like a green number 2 down, then I can then play a green number 3, and then I can play a green number 7. But once I get to 7, I can go back to 6. You have 5 suits, 5 different colors, and cards numbered 2 through 10. You can also discard cards and then pick cards out of the discard pile. You're trying to always figure out what your opponent's doing. It's a Reiner Knizia game, so you can imagine what this is like. It's one of those very mind meldy. No, it isn't. It's not mind meld. That's not the right word. You're always trying to get into the head of your opponent. And if you like two-player dueling style games like that, it's great. It's also one of those where there's some risk management, because if you start putting cards into a color, you basically start at a deficit. The Lost Cities theme doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of just so that the game has a theme. It tries to say that as you put more cards down, you're exploring more into a lost city and the images get more and more clear the higher number you get. But the theme doesn't work. It's really more of an abstract game, but it's a fun card game. It's a very easy game to bust out. Don't have time to teach a new game in a night, and you want to play with your significant other or a friend. And it has an app version too. It's not bad. Lost Cities, number 30. Number 29, Treasure Island. Treasure Island is an asymmetrical game where one player is Blackbeard and all the other players are pirates that are trying to find Blackbeard's treasure. Blackbeard's job is to reveal information about his treasure in a way that it keeps it vague enough that no one can figure it out. And if he lasts long enough without anyone figuring out, he will break out of his prison from which he is communicating from and then try to get the treasure. And if he gets to it, he wins. Here's the secret of the game. All the pirates individually won't have enough information to find the treasure. But if they put their heads together, they could do it no problem. But it's not cooperative, though. Only one person wins. Only one of these pirates wins. It really comes down to how much do those pirates want Blackbeard to lose. So if you're a player where your friends always want you to lose, maybe don't be Blackbeard for this one. But if you are the only one that knows the game, maybe you should be Blackbeard. It's a really fun game. It uses that like clear, as the British reviewers say, acetate kind of overlay kind of a thing. So it's got really nice components. The box is really nice. When I got the expansion, the insert even, getting rid of the insert, it's that's the only painful thing about the game for me is combining everything into the main box requires you to kind of do away with the original packaging, which is unfortunate. But if you care that much about a game, it's a good game, right? Treasure Island is my number 29. Number 28, The Crew. And the version of The Crew that I've played is The Quest for Planet 9. So The Crew is a trick-taking game. It's a cooperative game. And it doesn't make a lot of sense when you first explain it to people, unless they played a lot of trick-taking games. You're going to play a game basically of like spades. One player, the dealer, has to be the one to get the pink 5. And it's like 4 suits, kind of like a normal deck of cards. Once you complete that mission, then you get harder one. Green 6 has to go to the player to the dealer's left, and then the dealer has to get the green 2. You keep playing, you keep making it harder, and you can't talk about your cards while you're playing. So it's a great cooperative experience like that. In part 2 of my Lord of the Rings, the card game retrospective, I talked about one of the ways to make a cooperative game work and make it so that it's not just one person telling everyone else what to do, is to make the game sufficiently complex so one person can't just tell everyone what to do. Well, there's another way you can make a cooperative game work and avoid the quarterbacking problem. It's by having a game with hidden information. You literally don't know what your other players know. And that can be done poorly. I thought, for example, like Hanabi isn't a great game. It's just a matter of how much you want to kind of try to cheat in that game. The Crew does it excellently. In fact, when I first time I busted out The Crew, 2 of the other players took pictures of the game because they had to go buy it. It was an excellent game. The Crew is number 28. Number 27, Dominion. Dominion could have been higher on the list if I played it earlier in its lifespan. See, I got to Dominion in the late 2010s, and Dominion actually had been around a lot by that point. Dominion is the original deck building game. And I say deck building as a separate thing from deck construction. Deck building being where you build your deck throughout the course of a game, and that's the mechanic of how the game works. Deck construction being like how you build a deck before you go play a game of Magic the Gathering. Dominion effectively just became a mechanic. It was the deck building mechanic. That's all the game really is. What makes Dominion a game is just the fact that you have a lot of different cards to play with. The specific way that Dominion deploys deck building is actually a pretty vanilla thing. So you start with 10 cards, 3 of which are points cards, so they're kind of dead cards in your hand, and the other 7 are money cards. And you're trying to buy cards, and you have 10 action cards to choose from in a game. And you can buy better money cards, and you can buy better points cards, and the idea is you want to get a good engine going where you can buy a lot of cards, but you don't waste space in your deck on points cards until the end of the game, so that if you time that up well, you'll be able to get the most points and you won't have slowed yourself down. The way the game expands, there are a lot of expansions for Dominion. What they do is they add basically more action cards. So I've played Dominion 2nd Edition. I have Dominion Intrigue and Dominion Prosperity. And I kind of don't want anything else because that's already a lot of action cards to choose from. Dominion is a lot of fun. And sometimes if you want to play a game, you just want to play Dominion. If I had played the game from when it came out, which I think was, I'm going to guess is about 2008, I could easily see this being higher in the greatest games of all time list. If I had to rank the greatest games of all time for like other people, Dominion would probably be higher in the list. For me personally, I really like Dominion. I played a lot of Dominion, but there are other versions of the deck building type mechanic and more complete games, in my opinion, based on deck building that I enjoy more and have actually played a lot more of. Dominion also, it could be done a little bit better with the theming and the artwork. It kind of is crappy artwork. So yeah, Dominion. It's number 27. Number 26, Carcassonne. Carcassonne is another game like Dominion where if I were ranking the board game community's greatest games of all time, it would be up there. Carcassonne's been around since I think the year 2000. It's a tile laying game trying to add to cities and roads that are getting built out and use your meeples to claim items of interest on the map for points. And you're trying to finish buildings, but also make sure that your friends can't finish outcrops of your board before you do. Oh. Carcassonne is a great game. It's one of those games we actually kind of take for granted now too. If you were super into board games in the early 2000s, your games to choose from were probably, Catan, El Grande, Puerto Rico, Carcassonne. I mean, I would be playing Carcassonne all the time there. With those games to choose from. And I still enjoy it. If I see a Carcassonne expansion for a good price, I'm probably going to buy it. I've made the mistake with Carcassonne where I've also bought expansions for both the 1st and 2nd edition of the game, which have almost no difference, but they changed the 5th or the 6th player color from pink to gray, or from gray to pink, so they don't match. So I kind of screwed that up. So I bought the 1st edition of the game, so I had something to put my expansions with, which is financially not something I would recommend. But I wouldn't do that if I didn't care a lot about my copy of Carcassonne. Mists over Carcassonne actually included in this entry for Carcassonne. Yeah, Mists over Carcassonne. So Mists over Carcassonne makes it a cooperative game, and it does a good job of it. It's also, Mists over Carcassonne is also an expansion to Carcassonne that can be played on its own. So I count it as part of the Carcassonne entry. So to be clear, number 26 is Carcassonne and Mists over Carcassonne. Number 25, Pitch Car. Pitch Car is also a game I really wish I had discovered earlier so that I could have gone ham on the expansions. I like playing it. I can play with my 4-year-old. Good flicking game like that. I actually play with my 4-year-old, and I play it with my 4-year-old and some other friends and friends' parents and stuff, and he won. And that was a good thing because he's really competitive. So Pitch Car is a dexterity game where you're flicking your little race cars, which are really just little circles, around the track. You got one flick at a time. You're all taking turns. And you got a nice track that has walls to it. You can make a customized track. There's a lot of expansions. You also have Pitch Car Mini, which is smaller, but then there are ways you can combine Pitch Car with Pitch Car Mini. Man, I really wish I had found Pitch Car when these were still more available, because it's tough to get a lot of the Pitch Car expansions now. And I'm one, given that you look at my collection of some games like Hero Escape, I'm someone that goes all in on games that I really like. I'll just buy the expansions. I'll just be like, give me everything. And then I'll try to play with it, and even if I don't, I'm still happy that I have the option.
So we have it.
So we have it. That way we have it. That way you have it.
I like Pitch Car because I like those racing style games. Sometimes with modern games, I feel like you're missing some of those old school style, just who's going to get around the board first. I don't like roll and move games, but I like the concept of racing. It's a fun dexterity game too, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. So Pitch Car is number 25 with a wish that I had played it more, and I wish it were higher. I really do. Number 24. Telestrations. Telestrations is one of the best party game concepts ever. Telestrations is the game of telephone, but with images. The first time I ever played Telestrations, I was in tears laughing. So the way it works is everyone starts with a prompt and everyone draws something on their own. You hand the drawing then to the person to your left, and you get the drawing from the person from your right. And you try to recreate what the prompt is. And obviously you're not going to get exactly right because no one's drawing is perfect. And even if they were perfect, it's not obvious always what the prompt was. And then you pass the new deformed prompt off to your buddy, who then has to draw based on that prompt. And by the time you go around the table, things from like falling off a cliff to the fiscal cliff is real to money doesn't buy happiness. And then you get like a sad piggy. Like it's really funny how it can go. It's another one that kind of people take for granted now too. Like there are other versions of the game, like Cranium Scribblers just steals the idea. I don't know how they got away with that. I think there are other twists you can do on the game, but at its core, it's just a great party game. It's a game that everyone's kind of played by this point. I mean, let's be clear, like top 24, that's a really good game. Telestrations is number 24 all time for Jackson Warfield. Just gonna introduce myself in the middle of the list. Number 23, King of Tokyo / King of Tokyo Origins / King of New York. King of Tokyo is a game that nailed it the first time, in my opinion. So King of Tokyo is a Yahtzee-style game. You're trying to, smash your friends with your standee, which should be really cool if they were miniatures, but they're just standees. Smash your friends by rolling dice. The center of the table, which is Tokyo in King of Tokyo. You can step into Tokyo, in which case you can kind of just like mash everybody from Tokyo, but you can't heal there, so if you take too many hits, you gotta leave. And you're rolling dice that can roll up either smashes or healing results or just generic numbers for scoring points. King of Tokyo is a nice, easy game to play. It's a lot of fun, especially for people that are only used to games like Monopoly, and you're ready to show them out something besides Catan or Ticket to Ride. The reason why I like King of Tokyo much more than King of New York, and I think some people have talked about this before. I mentioned with King of Tokyo how you have some numbers and you just get points from them. So for example, if you roll 3 threes, you get 3 points. King of New York took that aspect of the game as being too simplified and boring and tried to add a whole building like destruction aspect to the game. What they did was they made the game just complicated enough that you're not likely to bust it out, and just complicated enough that if you're going to learn something like that, you're going to take a game that's more interesting than King of Tokyo, unless you really like King of Tokyo. So King of New York is like that guy that's, it's like the football player that's too fat to be a fullback, but not tall enough to be an offensive lineman. Random side complaint. Hollywood never understands that offensive linemen need to be tall. It's the opposite of a sweet spot. It's like it's that sore spot, the sour spot. It's the opposite of a sweet spot. So I don't really like King of New York, although if you buy it, you can just throw it with the main game and you got all the different characters to choose from. Although that's a lot to fit in one box, so I still need to keep like both boxes there. I haven't really played that much with the power-up expansion, but I think that's a good addition to the game. King of Tokyo Origins I recently played. That's the board game Contraction, the anti-expansion for King of Tokyo, so you basically don't have any cards that require tokens in the game. Mainly it's just more standees that you can use. I'm looking forward to trying King of Monster Island at some point. I don't own it. King of Tokyo, great game, number 23 of all time. Number 22, Sushi Go Party. And Sushi Go. Sushi Go is the easiest drafting game to get to the table. Everyone is drafting sushi cards, and the different sushi give you different amounts of points, and you're trying to maximize your set collection through drafting cards. It's got cute little sushi drawings, similar to Seven Wonders, because you're drafting cards, but it's a much simpler system, and it's easier to get played. Sushi Go Party, which arguably is what the game should have been in the first place, gives you a lot more cards to choose from, so you're not playing with the same like 8 types of sushi from the beginning. And I really like Sushi Go Party. It's a great game, especially if you feel someone hasn't played a drafting game and you want to just show them what it's like. But it's a fun game in itself. It has a solid app, actually. I don't have Sushi Roll very high on the list because, it didn't need a dice game, I guess. If there's a drafting game that competes with Sushi Go, it's actually probably Draftosaurus, but Draftosaurus didn't make my top 50. It just missed, actually. But that one can be a little bit tough because you're drafting little meeples and you can feel what they are when you're picking them out. It's a little bit of a different thing. But Sushi Go, it's a staple. Everyone should have Sushi Go in their collection if they consider themselves a board game enthusiast. Sushi Go for me is number 22 all time. And number 21, Small World. Small World's an area control game where instead of having generic little dudes on a map, you have different races. These races are like elves, dwarves, more than just skeletons, sorcerers, Amazons. It's an interesting mix even in just the base game. There's not a lot to the combat. You basically enter the board and with a stack of your guys, And every time you take over land, you got to use your guys to take up the territories. There's a little bit of chance you can push it often for like one extra territory at the end of each turn. But really what the game works is when people attack you, you lose your token. So you lose your population of your race. So for each race, you get a good like 1 or 2 round prime. Really, the 2 rounds that's tends to be the sweet spot for a lot of races. 3rd round, if you're really stretching it. 4th round, if you go 4 rounds with one race, you're either doing a really good job or you keep forgetting to, or you're like you need to just bite the bullet and switch races, because what you do is your race, then you set them to go into decline. You basically lose a turn, and then the next turn you come in with your new race. It's a fun game, especially if you like the area control aspect. When you pick a new race, you get a combination between races with special twists on their abilities. So that decision is very fun. So every game is a little bit different that way. Small World's one of those games where I introduced it to a bunch of people, and then someone came back the next day at work and said, like, I really want to play Small World again. And whenever that happens too, the game comes up higher on my list, because that's kind of the whole point of the thing, right? Is you want to have fun with other people. It's not just that I enjoy it, just playing myself like I'm really having fun here, although that does matter. You also want to make sure the game is fun for other people. I've had a lot of success with Small World being fun for a lot of people. Small World is number 21. To be fair, also, I haven't played Small World Underground yet, but I would like to. I have some of the mini expansions for Small World, though, and I have, like, River World, for example. So I played some of the expansions. And that is my top 30 through number 21. Subscribe to Jackson Warfield's Game Room to see me pick up this list where I have now left off with number 20. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment if you have anything to say about it, and I'll see you with the top 20.